Okay, if you could just tell me your name and your age.
My name now is Edith Bahnsen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 90 years old.
Okay.
I was 90 the 1st of June.
Oh, good.
And I intend to live another 11 years. My grandfather lived to be 101, and I want to tie him.
Mm-hmm. And your grandfather, he came from Germany? Was that what?
Right?
Your grandfather, he came from Germany?
Yeah.
Yes? What do you remember about him?
He was born in Mecklenburg, Germany.
She's putting out the book, the Ottawa County and its families. Her grandfather is featured in there as well as the rest of her family. I think there's a picture of you in here too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Me and my grandfather.
Yes.
What page was that?
I don't know.
Okay, I know
I
it's up front.
have a copy here.
Okay,
There we go.
there you go.
Oh, that's the one you gave. Yeah. He had his accordion. He played the accordion. And when he was 90 years old yet, he still used to go to the Brotherhood and play the accordion for them. And the strange thing is, my father died at 48.
Oh.
He had pneumonia. And back in 31, there wasn't anything they could do for her. Grandpa lived to be 101.
70.
And it says when your father died, your sister and your mother took care of you?
Yeah. My father was a farmer.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, Grandpa always lived with us, and my sister, her husband was in the army, and when my dad died, he got out of the army and took over the farm. So I lived with my sister and her husband till I got married.
When was that? When did you get married?
When?
Yeah.
39, or yeah, 39. I graduated in 38, and in 39 I got married.
To who? Who did you marry?
Dale Damschroder. It was Keith Damschroder's father's brother.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about your family?
Well, Grandpa must have had a rough time too. When my grandmother was 37 years old, she died. She left 7 children. And my aunt raised my dad and the others. And for some reason or other, they lived in a log cabin. And my aunt would have to take care of my dad, of course. And they didn't have screen doors and stuff. So in order to keep him in the house, he was afraid of feathers. And they'd put a feather in the doorway, and my dad was afraid to go past that feather, so he'd stay in the house.
Why feathers? Why was he afraid of feathers?
I don't know. I just
That's
remember
funny.
my aunt's telling that was how they kept him in the house, because he was afraid of feathers. And they'd put one in the doorway, and he wouldn't go past it. He probably was only maybe 6, 7 years old, maybe not that old.
Where did they live?
Well, our homestead on the Portage River Road, you know where Brush Wellman is? Just a mile and a half east of there on that road. And I started school in a one-room school.
Which one? Do you know the name?
I don't even know the name of it. But I was the only one from that school that went to Harris-Elmore. I had neighbors, but they went to a different grade school. And I was the only one that went to this school. And I'll tell you, if I'm telling things that you'd rather I didn't say, why, say something.
No, tell me whatever you want.
My first grade teacher was a newly graduate from Bowling Green. And can't you imagine just a young, a student, just a new graduate. It was his first school. And there were 6 or 7 of us kids in the first grade. And one of the boys at home always talked German. He didn't talk English till he went to school. And we'd have the flashcards, and he'd get excited and he'd call out the answers in German. And the teacher just broke up. Can't you imagine a new graduate? And the kid said the flashcards in German.
Was this at the Elmore school or the one room?
That was at the one-room
Yeah.
school. And then it happened in later years, his sister, this teacher's sister, was married to my husband's brother. And then I was a smarty in school. I mean intelligent.
Not a smart aleck.
There was one girl in the 2nd grade, and she was a slow learner, and they thought that if she had a little competition, maybe she would be able to do better. So they asked my parents if they cared, they put me in the 2nd grade with her. So I took the 1st and 2nd grade together. So I only went to school 11 years.
Wow.
The dollar bill from her grandfather.
$1 bill. She was telling me something about a $1 bill from your grandfather.
Oh, I got a $2 bill.
Oh, two.
A big, well, you wouldn't know. That was when I was, young. Our money, our paper money was, an inch bigger than it is now. And Grandpa gave my mother some money to buy me an accordion. And my mother kept that $2 bill and gave it to me. She took her money to buy my accordion. And I've still got that $2 bill. It's in my deposit box in the bank.
Wow.
And I've got a 2-cent piece that my father found in the pig pen. The pig pen was where the log cabin used to be. And somehow or other, it was lost, while they lived there. And he found this 2-cent piece, and I still have that.
I bet that's worth something.
I bet it is too.
Yeah.
So I've got it's in storage with my other stuff, but I'll have to have them find it and have my grandson, who's my POA, have him check it and see what he wants to do with it.
Do you want to tell me more about the schools again while we were?
But the one-room school?
Either that or about the Elmore schools.
Oh, well, when I was in the 4th grade, Elmore centralized.
Yeah.
They started sending the bus around. So I went to Elmore then. I saw her in the 4th grade in Elmore. And, I can remember, can you imagine going from a one-room school to a big school like Elmore? I would get lost trying to find the bathroom. And at that time, there was a colored man, was the janitor at Elmore School, and they had a boy, Joey, and he was a mulatto. He was a Negro, but he was blonde and had fair skin. And he was mentally retarded, but they paid the school to keep him in school. And he had been in the room that I went into. And they put him in another room, and he didn't like me because they had moved him into another room. And he took my dictionary out of my desk one time and hid it in a cornfield outside the school.
Oh my gosh.
But his parents paid so much to have him in school. And his sister had twin babies. And I think she lived in Sandusky. And when she'd come home, Joey'd get sick in school. So he could go home and he could see the babies.
Do you remember any of your teachers at Elmore?
Norma Went was my first teacher. I think she married her brother, but I'm not sure. My next teacher was Mabel Rosine. And my 6th grade teacher was Margaret Miller. My 7th grade teacher was, 7th and 8th grade we had 3 teachers. Honora Marche, Dora Coleman, and, I can't think of the third one right now. Well, anyhow, there were 3 teachers then. And we had to change classes. Oh my, that was really a big deal.
Ask about the superintendent.
The superintendent? I'm supposed to ask about the superintendent?
But,
Did you know something about the superintendent?
oh, we only had one.
Yeah.
George Green.
Yeah.
And he was a tall man. And he liked to hand up time. You know, make up time for doing things. And he'd look over the door, the glass in the door, see somebody chewing gum. He'd open the door. 30, sorry. Everybody talked about George Green. 30, sorry. We'd have to go and make up time in the science room. But he was superintendent there all while I was there.
Yeah. Were you involved in anything at school? Were you involved in anything at school? Clubs or did they have that? Or maybe
In
sports or something?
in high school, we had the Birthville Club.
Yeah.
That was for girls that took secretarial work, shorthand and that sort of thing. And we had the Versatile Club, and for a long, long time, we would meet yet after we graduated.
Oh.
We had the Versatile Club. But other than that, well, I sang in the Glee Club.
The Glee Club, yeah. Do you remember anybody from school that were good friends of yours?
But,
Do you remember anybody from school that were good friends of yours that you used to hang out with?
well, my best friend died when we were juniors. She had leukemia. And from the time I started Elmore School, we were best friends. And when we were juniors, she got sick, and she died yet that year. But another Irene Damschroder, she and I used to stay back and forth to each other's houses. She lived in Elmore, and I lived out in the country. So it was a treat for her to live out in the country, stay out in the country. And we were kind of a close class. Dr. Manzer was in my class.
Oh, yeah? Did you get into Elmore much? Into the town? Do you remember any of the businesses that were there at the time?
At noon, a lot of times, a couple of us girls would walk downtown. We'd have a couple of pennies, and Jeremy's drugstore had penny candy. We'd walk uptown, and then there was a place, it might be where the library is now, I'm not sure, but there were wildflowers growing in the front yard.
Yeah, I've heard
And
that.
we used to stop and pick flowers on our lunch hour.
Yeah, someone else told me about the
Oh,
flowers,
really?
yeah.
It's funny that I can remember all things like that. Oh, one thing with the country school, we used to have box socials. And of course I was too little to have a box of my own, but my sisters did. And they'd have somebody auction off the boxes, and fellow that would buy the box, they got to eat with that girl. And, oh, gee, they had chicken and all kinds of stuff in their boxes. And we didn't have electricity in our school. And the teacher, we had a furnace, and the teacher had to keep that fire going. Even when we had women teachers, they had to, and my mother used to make me chocolate milk, hot chocolate, and we'd put that on top of the furnace and keep it warm for me when I'd have my lunch.
Did you go to church out there?
I always went to church in Oak Harbor. St. Paul's.
St. Paul, yeah.
At the time it was St. Paul's Evangelical, and then it was St. Paul's Reformed, and now it's UCC. I've always belonged to the same church all 90 years.
Were you involved in it a lot? Did you?
Yeah, I taught Sunday school.
Yeah.
I counted money. I went to the Ladies' Aid, sang in the choir. I was fairly active. And then one of the girls, well, one of the ministers that we had, he and his wife built a house, so they moved out of the parsonage, and their son and his wife moved into the parsonage, and I used to babysit their children. And she's a head physical therapist at St. Charles Hospital.
Oh.
And when I was a patient there, she came to see me, and then when I was there again, I had therapy, and had therapy under her, and in fact, I had a nice card from them for Halloween.
Do you want to tell me how you met your first husband?
How I met him? Yeah. The girlfriend of mine that died, her sister used to work for my first husband's parents. And she brought him over to our house to meet me. And that was it. And I went, when I graduated, I went there to work. We weren't married then or anything then, but I went with him, but his mother was always ill and he needed help. And at that time, one of my husband's brothers lost his wife when their baby was born. And Keith's parents took him from the hospital, and then Laurel, Keith's mother, got a strep infection. They had to get the baby out of the house, so they took him out to the in-laws, and his father lived there too. And that's where I worked. I took care of him. I raised him practically. And he still comes to my Hengvoss reunion. He was not a Hengvoss or anything, but he still remembered me enough to want to come to my reunion.
Oh.
But his father remarried, and his stepmother didn't want him. He didn't know where to him. And he finally went to live with his mother's parents in Pemberville. When he graduated, he came and lived with us, and he lived with us until he got married.
Did you live close to your parents? Did you live close to your parents?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He crossed the river.
Yeah.
In fact, one year, we were both farmers, and we went over to my sister's to butcher on New Year's Day because my brother-in-law worked at the Army depot, and that was the only day he had off, so they butchered on New Year's Day. And we went over there, and we had this snowstorm, and we couldn't get home. We were there for 4 days before we could get out, and my husband would walk across the river over to where we lived to do the chores, and then he stayed there all day, and then at night he'd come back to my sister, walk back to my sister. You couldn't get through the roads.
Jeez. When was that?
What year?
Yeah. Big snow.
No, they would have been about 40 or something
Yeah.
like that. And the 28th of October was always a holiday for me. That was my grandfather's birthday. He lived to be 101, and he lived with us. And as long as I could remember, on the 28th of October, I'd get home from school, we'd have a house full of company. It was Grandpa's birthday. And everybody came and celebrated Grandpa's birthday. And he never talked English.
Oh.
But there were 3 of his old German buddies would come over to our house on his birthday and play cards with him. But my aunts and cousins would all that was always a holiday. When I'd get off the school bus, our house would be full.
Can you tell me more about your brothers and sisters?
I only had two sisters.
Sisters, oh, just the sisters, okay.
The one I lived with, she had 9 children. And she had MS. So she died in Riverview, the nursing home. My other sister was, Clara was 8 years older than me. And Dorothy, my oldest sister, was 10 years older than me. And she had cancer. She had cancer of the colon. And she was 60 when she died, and Claire was 59. And here I am 90. But Clara's children, of course, my children, I lived there till I got married. So they were more like brothers and sisters to me. And they all went to Elmore school. And one of her boys, her second boy, was in the army, and he was stationed in Germany during the Korean War. He was in the Army of Occupation in Germany, and he was a corporal, and he was taking a group of fellows out for maneuvers on a Sunday afternoon, and they went over an embankment, and he was killed. So here I had another nephew. My other sister had a son in Korea in the fighting, and he got home. He was home by the time Dick was brought home for burial. And they had Dick sealed in a casket that we got to see him. And Clara had 7 boys and 2 girls. It was kind of a strange thing too. Her oldest boy and her youngest child, youngest girl, both died within the last year, only about 2 weeks apart. Said that Charles had to go and make room for his sister in heaven. Of course, Clara was gone then already. And then one nephew, Jim Mormon, that was married. I had 2 nephews graduate the same year. I was a year ahead of you, and I think. Well, anyway,
2 years.
my first husband's brother's boy, Keith, and my sister, one of her boys, were in the same class.
How did you meet your second husband?
He was my first boyfriend.
Oh, yeah?
And, of course, I suppose I was about 15 or 16 when we went together. And then he joined the 3 C's. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. So he was stationed at Swanton. And he didn't get home very much. When he did, he'd have to walk and hitchhike. And so, well, heck, I was at the age where I wanted to go. So we didn't go together anymore. And then his first wife was with me when I got married the first time. She was a good friend of mine. And his brother was married to my sister. So we kept in touch all through the years. And I was a widow for 12 years. Then Clifford came back and we got married. I was 78 and he was 80. And we went to, he had a son living in California, and we went to California on our honeymoon on the Amtrak train.
Wow.
I had never been to California. Clifford had been there several times. He'd go to visit his son. But we only had him a little over 2 years, but they were 2 very happy years.
Mm-hmm.
But we had, like I said, we had kept in touch all through the years. We used to rub. We had a thing on the Saturday before Easter. Our family would get together and fly kites. We'd have a potluck supper, and Clifford was always there, and I was there, and one time his sister lived across the street from me in Oak Harbor then. She said, Clifford, why don't you go over and visit Edith sometime? She don't like fish and she don't like green beans. What would I do with a girl that don't like them? And but he did come anyway. His sister never found that out, though she was dead before we got married. So green beans has always been a joke in our family. I'm boring you.
No, no. These are funny. Have you worked any place besides? I know you farmed and everything,
Oh,
but
yeah.
did you work at other places?
I graduated from Elmore High School. Mom did manage to, send me to high school. And she couldn't afford to send me to college or anything. And I found out that Erie Army Depot was hiring clerk typists, and I had typing in school. I got a job out there. And while I was working there, I heard that they were getting IBM in. I didn't know what IBM was, but it sounded interesting. And I asked if I could maybe get into that. They taught me IBM. And I worked there 6 years. I saw in the Blade, naturally, that the Blade was hiring an IBM operator. And I called them and made an appointment, and I got the job. I worked there for 30 years. And while I was there, then they went to computers, and they sent me to school for computers. So I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to learn IBM at Erie, and then computers at the Blade.
Nice. Did you, when you went into Elmore, did you ever go to the homecomings there? The homecomings?
In Oak Harbor?
Did they have them in Oak Harbor too?
Oh, we had a
Yeah.
homecoming every year in Oak Harbor.
Tell me about it.
Well, that was interesting. The merchants would give tickets when you'd buy things. They'd give tickets away, and you'd sign your name on it and put it in for a drawing. And boy, when they had those drawings, people were really there. We used to win stuff. Maybe it was a gallon of gas or something like that. Or maybe a dinner at a restaurant or something. And but that was a big deal. They had a big parade on Saturdays. Everybody went to the homecoming. Man. Ferris wheel, a tilt-a-whirl, different amusement things. And then the girls would collect these tickets. The tickets were in were perforated. One half you used yourself, you put your name on, put in for a drawing, and the other half you gave to one of the girls that was running for queen. And the girl that got the most tickets got to be the queen of the homecoming. And then at the Armory they had craft shows and stuff like that. And, the farmers had apples there, and it was like a fair.
Yeah.
But they did have a nice parade. And I missed one of the last ones because my son had to be born during the homecoming.
How many children did you have?
I just had the
Just
one
the
boy.
one?
That's
Yeah.
his picture. I just lost him Valentine's Day.
Yeah. I'm gonna put his picture up here.
And he has 3 sons.
Mm-hmm.
3 grandchildren. So I did 3 great-grandchildren. Well, then I got stepchildren, step-grandchildren, and 1 step-great-granddaughter out in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
I've seen her once. But when my son died, my stepson from California and his sister, my stepdaughter from Minnesota, both came for his memorial service.
Oh, that was nice.
Which I thought was very nice.
Yeah.
Because I was only married to his father a little over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just very, very good that they came all that distance for that memorial.
Mm-hmm. Something that, what were you gonna say?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you finish up. I was just gonna say, something we've been asking everybody is about what were you doing during the blizzard of '78?
Well, we managed to get home from work that day. And on our way home, where the car in the ditch, and they wanted my husband to try to get them out. And he said, we can't get you out of there. He got in the car. We kind of knew who they were. They lived in Oak Harbor. They had a baby in the car with them. There were 4 or 5 people in the car and a baby. So you get in the car. We took them back to Oak Harbor. And of course, the neighbors would walk to town to get groceries and stuff, milk. And so I forget how many days we were off. But then when I finally did get back to work, I got to work from Oak Harbor, and people that lived in Toledo couldn't get downtown to go to work.
Oh my God.
That was the only time I think that I missed work because of snow.
Mm-hmm.
And they were ones remarked about it, that people living in Toledo couldn't get downtown, but I could get in from Oak Harbor.
You put them to shame.
What about the snowstorm now in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
I have a nephew living in Paragon, Massachusetts. I haven't heard from him.
Is there anything you want to tell me that you can remember about your childhood? Anything else
And my childhood?
that you remember?
grandma who lived along the river, and we used to, if my cousins would come out, we'd like to go down and go wading in the river, and we could practically go across the river, skipping stones, without getting our feet wet. Little old Edith was always clumsy. I went to jump onto a big rock. I slipped and I fell in. I was a tomboy. I wasn't a tomboy. I couldn't do those things that other kids did. Oh, and Grandpa played the accordion, of course, and living along the river in the summertime, he used to sit out on the porch and play the accordion, and people that lived across the river would sit outside in order to listen to Grandpa play his accordion. And he was not a young man then. I used to wonder sometimes, I wonder why Grandpa never works. One day I got to think, he was 80 years old when I was born.
Oh, that'll do it.
But he used to like to husk corn. And we had a cornfield right back of the house, and he went out and husked corn every fall. And so my brother-in-law, well, it was getting too nasty for him to be out doing that. So they hurried up and got that field husked. They had a field back by the woods. I'll be darned, Grandpa went back there.
Did some more.
That's corn back there. And he used to, I used to tell him, he had a big umbrella he'd carry with him. And we had a lane going back from our house back through our woods. And he dug a ditch along the lane, and he'd take his umbrella and his shovel, and he'd sit down and rest, put his feet down in the trench where he was digging, and sit under his umbrella and rest while he would be digging in his ditch. It was just ironic that he lived to be so old and my dad died so young.
Do you remember any people in your life that you found were interesting, or people that were in town or lived around you that were...
Do I what?
Did you remember some people that lived around you or that you had met that you found particularly interesting, or...
Well, this is something that, I don't know if you're acquainted with the Exponent. Brother Glue, Frank Glue,
Yep.
he had an article just the other week about things that went on years ago. And I remember one of them was butchering. The neighbors would all help each other with butchering. And one neighbor, he wasn't too good at a lot of things, but he was good at stirring the lard, rendering the lard, cooking that. And also, they always made apple butter. My dad had the job of peeling the apples, and Emery would always cook the apple butter. He liked to do things like that, and he was good at it. but he never had a tractor. He would pull a wagon across the field himself. But I remember very clearly how we used to go to different neighbors to butcher, and in the summer, thrashing. My mother would go and help the neighbor lady cook for the thrashers, and they'd take a wash tub outside, fill that with water, and when the fellows would come in from the field for thrashing, they'd wash up in this tub and come in the house to eat. And there'd be a couple of the neighbor ladies would come and help my mother, and she'd go and help them to cook these big dinners. Well, now, those were something else. Thrasher's dinners. My dad, he must have been a joker. He used to love to pin the pigtail on one of the women's jackets. And she didn't know it sometimes. She'd run around all day with that pigtail fastened to her jacket. And another thing he did, it was always my dad's job to turn the sausage stuffer. And at this one neighbor's, I don't know how he did it, but he got a pigtail in the sausage. And when the neighbor lady was frying the sausage one night for supper, she couldn't cut this piece of sausage. Her dad had got a pigtail in the sausage.
Cool.
There isn't too much I can remember about my dad, but he must have been quite a joker, to do things like that.
Well, if there's anything else you can remember that you'd like to add before we wrap it up. I said we're going to wrap this up here in a minute, so if there's anything that you can want to add that you think you'd like to say.
What you going to use this for?
The Elmore Historical Society is interviewing these people and about the area, and we're going to show it probably during festivals. They're going to they might make something out of it. I'm not sure yet. They haven't told me.
I hope it might be helpful to you. I'm just so thankful that my memory is good, that I can remember these things.
Oh yeah, great stories.
I really can't think of anything else. Any other questions you want to ask?
I think that's it. But thank you so much. Oh no, I wish I could think of more to ask.
Presidents.
The presidents. What presidents have you lived through?
But
What presidents have you lived through?
presidents?
Yeah, do you remember about them?
Coolidge and Wilson. Roosevelt. Bushes. Franklin Roosevelt.
Bahnsen.
Any favorites?
I always liked Roosevelt.
Yeah.
I liked Reagan too. My dad was a Democrat. My father-in-law was a Republican, and he was a township trustee for years. So when I married a Damschroder, I had to become a Republican.
Yeah.
When your father-in-law is a trustee, you're gonna change your politics.
Is there anything you wanted to ask her?
When President
Well, you can ask her.
Kennedy, when President Kennedy was,
But
when President Kennedy was killed, what were you doing?
Kelly, what was I doing? I think I must have been working at the blade at the time. Yes, I was. And we were on strike, or going on strike, and we went back to work just like that because of this big story with Ring being killed. That was something big for the blade.
Can you think of any other big stories for the Blade?
The worst was when we were on strike for 5 months.
Oh, yes.
But you had to belong to the union to work there. So.
When did you strike? When was the strike?
When was it? Oh, golly. I can't remember what year that was now. But we were out for 5 months. And, I didn't have to go out and pick us, because we had a commissary and a bar room. And people would come in there and get coffee and stuff like that. The ones that would be out on picket line. And I worked in there. But, oh, that was a long 5 months. But like I say, when Reagan died, we had walked out and we were having a meeting that night. And so just like that, we went back to work. I'm just not too sure about the date on some of those. It didn't happen.
There's nothing else then? Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it. And
I
I
hope
said,
it'll help you.
oh yeah, and such great stories too. I'm sure people will love them. They're entertaining for sure.